right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep, deep into narcissism.
Ooh, exciting.
But, with a bit of a twist. We're going beyond just the psychology.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at narcissism from a spiritual perspective.
I like it.
Our main source material for this deep dive is an article from the Spiritual Seek website.
Okay.
And it's called Analysis of the Narcissistic Personality from a Spiritual Perspective.
Catchy.
It was published fairly recently on August 9th of this year, 2024.
Okay.
And one of the things that really stood out to me and got me intrigued about this article was that it brings up this idea that the ego, which we often think of as like this driving force in narcissism.
Yeah, huge in narcissism.
Is actually considered an illusion in some spiritual traditions.
Whoa. Really?
So that's kind of what we're going to try to unpack today.
Okay, yeah.
If the ego, isn't even real in a sense, what does that mean for how we see narcissism?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm excited to dive into today.
Me too.
How about you?
I think that adding in that spiritual element really adds a whole other layer.
Totally.
Because, so often we think of narcissism as this purely psychological thing.
Right, exactly.
But when we start thinking about it in these different terms through this different lens, it does bring up a lot of interesting questions.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Okay, so before we, go full-on spiritual, maybe we should do a quick recap on, what is narcissism?
Totally.
Just the textbook definition.
Yeah, just so we're all on the same page.
Just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
What are we even talking about here?
Exactly.
When we say narcissism.
For sure. So, we're talking about that inflated sense of self-importance.
Right.
That constant need for admiration from others.
Yeah, the classic narcissist.
Yeah.
We've all met one, I'm sure.
Right, at least one.
Exactly. And that real lack of empathy for other people.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the hallmarks
right.
of narcissism.
The classic narcissist. Yes, exactly.
But what I think is so cool about this article is it doesn't just stop there.
Yeah.
It doesn't just say, here are the symptoms.
Right.
Yeah, this is what you're looking for.
Right.
It actually, goes deeper.
It does.
And tries to look at, how narcissism plays out on, a deeper level, an existential level even.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best points that it brings up is this whole concept of interconnectedness.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something that a lot of different spiritual traditions talk about.
Okay.
It's this idea that we're all connected, we're all part of this larger whole.
Right, like a giant cosmic web connecting us all.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And, that's something that's so contradictory to the perspective of a narcissist.
Right, completely clashes with the whole me first attitude.
Exactly, because a narcissistic perspective is actually all about separation.
Yeah.
It's about isolating yourself.
So they're isolating themselves.
There's a sense,
But putting themselves first all the time.
Right, it becomes all about my needs, my achievements.
Yeah.
And that really leaves very little room for any genuine connection.
Right, or empathy for other people.
Exactly.
Which I guess is a hallmark of narcissism, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's interesting to see how those two things kind of play off each other.
Yeah, and this is where I think that point about the ego being an illusion.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that.
Becomes really fascinating because, in traditions like Buddhism and Hinduism, the ego is often seen as something that's not actually real.
Not your true self.
Yeah, it's a construct.
Sure.
It's something that we create in our minds and then we cling to it.
Oh, okay.
But it's not this true essence of who we are.
I see. So their sense of self-importance is actually rooted in this illusion.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's really interesting to consider.
Yeah.
Because it makes me think about that constant need for validation that narcissists have.
Right.
They're always looking for praise, admiration. They need that external validation to feel whole.
Right.
And if we consider that maybe the ego itself is an illusion, then it's almost like they're trying to validate something that's not even really there.
It doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a really trippy thought.
It is.
It's like building a house on a foundation of sand.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy.
It just, won't last.
It's not going to hold up in the long run.
Yeah, okay, so I get that.
Yeah.
But then it makes me think, okay.
Yeah.
Don't we all crave validation to some extent?
That's a great point.
It's a pretty normal human desire, right?
Absolutely. I think we all have that need.
To feel loved.
Yeah.
To feel accepted.
Yeah.
So how is it that, for the narcissist, this desire gets so, twisted, distorted, blown out of proportion?
It's a great question. And I think this is where the spiritual perspective can offer some insights.
Okay.
Because a lot of spiritual traditions talk about finding fulfillment from within rather than depending on external validation.
Like becoming self-validated.
Exactly. And this is where practices like meditation and mindfulness come in.
Okay.
Because these practices encourage you to turn your attention inward and cultivate self-awareness.
Okay, so instead of seeking validation from others,
right,
you're like learning to recognize your worth from within.
That's the idea.
Okay, but is that like realistic for someone who is, like really stuck in that narcissistic pattern?
Right.
Like, can that actually help?
I think it definitely can.
Okay.
And it's important to remember it's not about eliminating the ego entirely. That's not really the goal.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding its nature.
Okay.
Recognizing its limitations.
Yeah.
And then finding a more healthy relationship with it.
So not getting rid of it.
Not getting rid of it.
But like taming it in a sense.
Yeah, taming it, becoming aware of it.
Okay.
And mindfulness can be a really powerful tool for that. Yep. Because imagine if you could start to observe those ego-driven thoughts.
Yeah.
The I'm the best, I deserve special treatment thoughts.
Right.
But you don't get swept away by them.
Yeah.
You're just observing them.
You can see them.
Yeah.
Almost like from a distance.
Exactly. And that creates space
Okay.
for self-awareness and ultimately, I think, for more fulfilling ways of being.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these practices could offer a different approach.
Yeah.
But what about empathy?
Oh,
because we, narcissists, struggle with empathy.
Absolutely.
Like, that's one of the key signs, right?
Big time.
But empathy also seems like such a fundamental part of, like,
yeah,
any spiritual path.
Right. You're absolutely right.
So how do those two things reconcile?
Yeah, empathy is really crucial in a spiritual context because it allows us to connect with others on a deeper level.
Okay.
To understand their experiences, to share in their joys and their sorrows. It's the foundation of compassion, of kindness, of genuine human connection. Yeah. So it's really, really important.
Okay, so then how can someone who's so wrapped up in their own ego, their own needs, their own desires, how can they ever develop empathy?
Yeah.
Like, it almost seems impossible.
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But what this article suggests is that empathy could actually be the key to overcoming those narcissistic tendencies.
Really?
Yeah. So imagine someone who's built up all these walls around their ego.
Okay. Yeah, I'm picturing it.
Yeah. They're protecting themselves from vulnerability, from getting hurt.
Right.
But now imagine those walls start to crumble.
Okay.
As they begin to understand and share the feelings of other people.
Okay.
It's like they're breaking free from that self-imposed isolation.
Okay.
And recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Wow. So as empathy grows, the walls of the ego come down.
Exactly. And compassion and kindness can start to flow in.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful process of transformation.
Oh, yeah.
And it aligns so beautifully with those core principles of so many different spiritual traditions.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Yeah.
I really am. This is fascinating stuff.
It is. It is.
But it also feels a bit theoretical.
Okay.
Like, how do we actually make that shift,
Right.
How do we move from a narcissistic mindset to a more spiritually grounded perspective?
Yeah.
Like, what are the practical steps?
That's a great question, and that's one that we'll explore in a lot more detail after a quick break.
Okay.
But I will say this. The article highlights 3 key pathways that can help facilitate this shift.
Okay.
And it kind of frames them as tools for personal growth.
Okay.
So we're going to dive into those.
Okay, can't wait.
After the break.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. All right, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about these pathways that can help someone shift from a narcissistic mindset to a more spiritually grounded one.
Right, exactly.
And I am very curious to dive into those.
Yeah, absolutely. And, these pathways are not just for people who, consider themselves highly narcissistic or anything like that.
Right.
They really do offer a lot of value to anyone who's on a path of personal growth.
Right.
And who's seeking, a more fulfilling, more spiritually connected life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's unpack those pathways.
Okay, let's.
The first one that you mentioned was self-reflection.
Yes.
And awareness.
Yes.
Which I gotta say, sometimes the thought of self-reflection just makes me want to hide under a blanket.
I hear you.
It can be a little scary.
Yeah, it can feel daunting.
Yeah.
But I think a good way to think about self-reflection is like you're holding up a mirror to your mind.
Okay.
It helps you to see those hidden patterns, the behaviors, the motivation that maybe you're not even aware of on a surface level.
Okay. I like that. I like that analogy.
Yep.
But how do we actually do that?
Right.
How do we hold up that mirror?
So I think journaling is a really, really great place to start.
Okay.
It's almost like you're having an open and honest conversation with yourself.
Right.
Where you can explore your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Okay.
And as you write, you might start to see like recurring themes or patterns that can give you some real insights into how your mind works.
Okay.
What makes you tick.
So journaling, but I've tried journaling before.
Yeah.
And I always get stuck on what to actually write about.
Right.
Do you have any tips or advice for that?
Absolutely. I think one of the best things you can do is just start with a simple prompt.
Okay.
Like ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Or what's been on my mind lately?
Right.
And don't worry about making it sound perfect or profound or anything. Just let your thoughts flow onto the page.
Just free writing.
Exactly.
Right.
Just free writing.
So that takes the pressure off
Exactly.
of writing something profound.
Exactly.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
The article also mentions contemplative prayer.
Yes.
As a form of self-reflection.
Yes.
Can you explain how that works?
So contemplative prayer is about quieting your mind.
Okay.
And connecting with, a higher power, if that's something you believe in.
Oh.
Or even just your own inner wisdom.
Okay.
And it can be a real source of guidance and insight.
Okay.
And allow you to see yourself and your actions through a more compassionate lens.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And this is something that's found in so many different spiritual traditions.
Okay.
And it can take so many forms.
Okay.
It could be silent meditation.
Okay.
It could be, guided prayer practices.
Right. Right.
There's no one right way to do.
So both journaling and contemplative prayer are ways of going inward.
Exactly.
And connecting with
that deeper part of yourself.
Yeah, that deeper part of yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And I think the key is just to find a practice that resonates with you.
Right.
And commit to it.
Yeah.
Make it a regular part of your routine.
Consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
Any of this stuff, really.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that was self-reflection.
Yes.
The second pathway was mindfulness.
Yes.
I feel like I've heard a lot about mindfulness.
Yeah, it's a bit of a buzzword these days,
yeah.
Isn't it?
But I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it actually applies to dealing with narcissism.
Okay, so mindfulness is all about training your attention to be present in the moment.
Okay.
Without judgment.
Okay.
So it's like you're hitting the pause button on that constant stream of thoughts and emotions.
Right, that are always carrying us away.
Exactly. Exactly.
So instead of getting swept up in those thoughts and feelings, you're learning to just observe them.
Exactly. You're creating space between your thoughts and your reactions.
Hmm.
So instead of just automatically reacting to a situation based on your ego's desires, you take a step back, you observe, and then you choose how you want to respond.
So you're not a slave to your immediate impulses.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I see how that could be really helpful.
Yeah.
For someone who is constantly seeking, external validation.
Totally, because it's you're building this internal foundation of self-acceptance, so you're less dependent on what other people think.
You're not looking to them to tell you you're worthy.
Exactly. You're finding that worth within yourself, and mindfulness can really help with that.
So it's okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But how do you do mindfulness?
Right.
It still seems a little...
abstract.
Yeah, abstract.
Yeah. It's easier than you think.
Okay.
So meditation is one really well-known technique.
Okay.
But there are so many others.
Okay.
Yoga, mindful walking, even just taking a few moments to focus on your breath.
Okay.
These can all help cultivate mindfulness.
So it doesn't have to be sitting on a mountaintop in a lotus pose.
No, not at all.
You can actually weave it into your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And anything new, it takes practice.
Right.
But with time and consistency, you can really train your mind to be more present, less reactive. And that can have such profound benefits for your mental and emotional well-being.
Okay, I'm sold on both self-reflection and mindfulness.
Good.
But now what about community engagement?
Okay. Yeah.
How does that fit into all of this?
So community engagement is all about directing your focus outwards towards the needs of others.
Okay.
And it's a really beautiful way to dismantle that kind of self-centered bubble
that
narcissism can create.
So it's like an antidote to that me first mentality.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you're part of something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
And that your actions can have a positive impact on the world around you.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, like, what are some actual ways that someone could engage with their community in a meaningful way?
So the possibilities are endless.
Okay.
You know, you could volunteer at a local charity.
Oh.
You could mentor a young person, help out at a food bank.
Yeah.
Even just offer a helping hand to a neighbor in need.
Yeah.
The key is just to find something that speaks to your heart.
Okay.
And allows you to contribute your unique skills and talents.
So it sounds like the act of like giving back to others can be really fulfilling.
Absolutely.
And help to kind of shift that focus away from the self.
Exactly. And that sense of purpose and connection that you get from giving back is so crucial for anyone who's trying to move away from that narcissistic mindset.
Right.
Because by focusing on the needs of others, you're cultivating empathy, compassion, you know, that sense of interconnectedness, all of which are so deeply nourishing for the soul.
Okay, I'm convinced. All three of these pathways sound really powerful and beneficial.
Yeah.
But is there, like, evidence that they actually work?
Right.
Like, is there research to back this up?
That's a great question, and it's one that, you know, researchers are increasingly exploring.
Okay.
I mean, there might not be a ton of studies specifically on these practices in narcissism,
right?
But there is a growing body of research that really highlights the benefits of things like mindfulness, self-awareness, altruism for overall mental and emotional well-being.
So even if the research is not specifically targeted at, like, narcissism, we can still see that these practices have a positive impact.
Absolutely. And anecdotally, there are countless stories of people who have transformed their lives by incorporating these practices into their daily routines.
Right.
You know, people who found greater peace, purpose, and connection by, you know, shifting their focus inwards.
Right.
Cultivating mindfulness, engaging with their communities.
So real change is possible.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that healing is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It takes time.
Right.
It takes patience. It takes a willingness to embrace the process.
Yeah.
But the potential rewards are immeasurable.
So even if we don't see, like, results overnight, it's important to keep practicing and keep going.
Exactly. Consistency is key.
Okay.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
You know, there are therapists, support groups, spiritual communities, you know, a whole network of resources that can offer guidance and support along the way.
We all need a helping hand sometimes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about narcissism from both a psychological and spiritual perspective.
Yeah.
We've looked at these pathways to healing. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think the next step is to zoom out a little bit and see how all of these pieces fit together.
Okay.
You know, we've been focusing on narcissism at the individual level.
Right.
But how do these concepts play out on a larger scale?
Oh, interesting.
You know, how does the culture we live in contribute to or challenge these patterns?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So we're taking everything we've learned and kind of applying it to the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm ready. Are you?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're back and ready to zoom out, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the bigger picture.
Right.
We've been, you know, kind of dissecting narcissism at the individual level.
Right, right.
But I'm curious to see how this all, like, plays out on a larger scale, like, you know, a societal level.
Absolutely. It's a crucial perspective to consider.
Okay.
You know, we've been talking about the ego as this driving force in narcissism.
Right.
But what if we're living in a culture that actually feeds that ego, you know? Oh. Like almost a giant collective ego.
Ooh, I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, we're constantly bombarded with images of, like, perfect lives on social media, right?
Yeah.
There's this constant pressure to strive for more.
Yeah.
To be the best, to stand out from the crowd.
It's like a breeding ground for narcissism.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the culture itself is almost encouraging those narcissistic tendencies that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. You know, and success is often measured by external markers like, you know, wealth, beauty, status.
Right. All the things that social media loves.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I see that.
So it's easy to see how those cravings for validation and admiration could become even more amplified in that kind of environment.
Yeah, it's almost like we're all like swimming in this sea of ego and, struggling to stay afloat.
Right, exactly.
So if that's the case, like where do those pathways to healing that we talked about, like the self-reflection, the mindfulness, the community engagement, like are they enough to counter this like larger cultural influence?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is both yes and no.
Okay.
So on an individual level, I think these practices can be so powerful for dismantling those narcissistic patterns and cultivating a more grounded, more connected way of being.
Okay.
But if we're really talking about a shift in like collective consciousness, then I think we need something more...
Like a more expansive approach.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what would that look like? Like, how do we even begin to shift the culture away from this, like, ego-driven frenzy?
It's a great question, and I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
You know, we need to recognize how these cultural forces are impacting us, both individually and collectively. And then we need to make conscious choices to resist those forces. You know, to choose connection over competition. To prioritize inner fulfillment over external validation.
So it's not just about fixing ourselves, it's about creating a culture
that
supports a healthier way of being.
Exactly. It's about questioning those messages that we're bombarded with. Challenging the status quo, creating spaces where authenticity and empathy and genuine connection can thrive.
This is giving me a lot to think about.
It is a lot, isn't it?
But I have to admit, it also feels a bit overwhelming. Like, where do we even begin? It's not like I can single-handedly change the culture.
You're right, you can't. But it starts with each of us. It starts with the choices that we make every day. You know, do we feed the ego or do we seek to transcend it? Do we get caught up in that illusion of separation? Or do we strive to cultivate connection?
So it's like those pathways to healing that we talked about. They're not just personal practices. They're actually like acts of rebellion against this ego-driven culture.
I love that, acts of rebellion. It's a great way to put it. Because every time we choose to act from a place of compassion, empathy, genuine connection, we're planting seeds for a more beautiful and fulfilling world.
Okay, that's inspiring. I like that. It makes me feel like I can actually make a difference.
You can.
Even if it's just like in my own little corner of the world.
Exactly. And remember, those small acts of kindness and connection, they can have a ripple effect. You know, when you shift your own energy, it impacts the people around you. And those ripples can spread far and wide.
It's like that quote, you know, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Ah, such a good one.
It sounds cheesy, but it's so true.
It is so true. Yeah, and when we start to embody those qualities of compassion, empathy, interconnectedness in our own lives, we become beacons of light for others.
We inspire others to do the same.
Exactly.
Wow, this whole conversation has been like such a mind-blowing journey.
It has been a journey, hasn't it?
We started by exploring narcissism from both a psychological and spiritual perspective.
We did.
We dove into these powerful pathways to healing.
We did.
And now we've zoomed out to see how all of this connects to the larger culture and like our collective evolution.
It's all connected.
I feel like I've gained so many new insights.
Me too.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I know I'm walking away with a lot to think about, and I hope our listeners are too.
I hope so too.
So until next time, keep diving deep and remember,
the change
starts with you.